Other people will come in.
Webcomics versus comics. Come on in, children. Not children. I don't know what to call people. Con goers. Connies. What is it? What is? There was some really good one. People are coming. Webcomics versus comics. Webcomics versus comics. Come watch us. We just keep talking, and everyone here will probably leave soon. But they'll have
even
fun
the people
while
who
they're
are our
here.
friends.
Webcomics versus comics.
Friends.
You know you want to. I'll be quieter during the panel, don't worry guys. Maybe. No, I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, well, once we start talking about comics, it's only going to get louder. There's so much passion.
That's true. Anyone else? Webcomics versus comics? No? No love? No? Zuko, did you see his shirt?
You as well, sir.
It's got a
Thank you.
dinosaur.
Your presence is much appreciated.
Webcomics versus comics. Come join us.
I wish we could serve you, like, tea and cake or something.
No. Okay, we're gonna start. Come on in, guys. We're just gonna start.
Okay, then I'll throw this away later.
If you want to like profit,
Okay,
no, I don't know if they'll
one
like
last
profit.
go. I'm going to run out in the middle of the hallway and announce our
Targeted.
Yes, okay.
Comics versus webcomics. Webcomics versus comics. Mighty and powerful gods. Nope. No one's coming for that even. Aelin, get back here.
Before the fire alarm starts.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Everybody's invited to the party. You're a party.
Oh, am I in the way?
Okay,
Yeah,
let's get this show on the road.
It was
Are
just
you
a
recording?
pain getting them in because my eyes.
I'll do you recording.
I've been recording for the past 5 minutes.
That's kind of embarrassing.
Whoa.
Zuko, you can come back in if you like. Nobody else loves us except our hardcore fans.
Thank you, beautiful people.
Ready?
Our lovely friends that we just met a few minutes ago.
Do you want to stand next to me? Because I'm probably going to have to stand up here and it's kind of
I want to
awkward.
stand next to you.
Being all alone. Wait, where's our paper?
Our paper's right here.
Yeah.
She's only your sister.
Alrighty, guys. If you're here, then by now you should probably know. This is Webcomics versus comics.
Megan, I was going to make them guess. 3 guesses. What's the name of our panel?
It's gonna be up there. I don't think we even need the mics. I think you guys can hear us.
I kind of like
If
the
you
mics.
can't
Am I
hear
too
me,
loud, guys?
raise your hand.
No, you're good.
Alright.
Okay. So, are you gonna be in
So
charge?
let's
Are you
start
gonna
with
scoot closer to me?
introductions. I want to be.
To be.
So neat. Okay.
Richard. Hi.
Oh, it's Michonne from Walking Dead.
Whoa. There's also Walking Dead comics. Walking Dead is based on a comic.
Yeah, it was
in
comic
case
before
you
it was
didn't know
a
that. Katara, your eyes are freaking me out.
I'm sorry. I know. You want me to look away?
Alright, so let's
No, they're awesome.
let's start with some introductions.
Alrighty. So.
Our quote-unquote credentials.
Now you better wait.
I'm Aelin. I've been reading webcomics for,
Aelin, we're supposed to start with comics are awesome.
well, I'm starting with
Fine.
We're Awesome.
We'll talk about ourselves.
And then
Go
we can
ahead.
move on
Go
to
ahead.
comics.
Go ahead.
Okay. I've been reading webcomics since, I found my first one, which must have been years and years ago. In fact, she, my sister, introduced me to comics and also inadvertently webcomics, inevitably. And so this is my sister.
Hi, I'm Megan, and I've been reading comics for a very long time, at least middle school, and now I'm in college, so a long time. So
moving on, what is this panel about?
other than us just talking a lot. Well, basically, we're all here, hopefully, because we think comics are awesome. Comics and webcomics. When we say comics, we're probably just referring to both of them.
Yeah,
If we're going to
it's the
refer
general.
individually, it'll be print comics and webcomics. So, we all think comics are awesome. Whether you like print comics better, let's see if we have anyone who likes print, who reads print comics more often. Anyone?
Yes, I'm winning already.
What?
Manga should count, yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
And there are online mangas too, so that would count as
Actually,
like
now.
Yeah. Like counting like Marvel and DC is what I mean, like that sort of print comic.
Yeah.
Who reads webcomics more?
Right here.
Yeah.
Convenient.
And who reads them both about the same amount?
We are winning now.
That would be the
Good
craziest.
job, guys. I'm proud of you. I think I read kind of them both about the same amount, but I don't have much time to read either. Anyway.
So we'll discuss later why it is like that maybe a certain kind of format will appeal to different people more, and hopefully you guys will give us some explanations too.
So the next thing we have is comics are diverse. So we're going to make some generalizations here But as you probably know, those, especially those who read like webcomics and either or comics, there's always the exception to the rule. Always.
Yeah.
So just so you know, when we make a
Always.
generalization, we don't necessarily mean like everything is that. We would just say everything is that.
Yeah. And I can really only speak from my experiences with webcomics, which is pretty, I don't want to say limited, but obviously, you know, the internet has everything and I can't see the entire internet. So I have a list of many different kinds of webcomics, and we will also get to that later.
Alrighty, and the last thing was, we love comics. And here's an example from a webcomic. Here's an example of what you can do with a webcomic that you cannot do in a print comic.
Yes.
Not yet, at least. I don't know, someday. And then that's an example of a lot of superheroes.
On a side note, I'm guessing we have a little bit of time, so I just wanted to ask you all, is it pronounced GIF or GIF? Because
Yeah,
apparently
what do you
this is
guys
some sort of argument going on.
Officially, it's GIF.
No,
but
it's GIF, okay?
No one pronounces it GIF.
What about you? What do you think?
What do you know? Like it's one of those tomato things.
Yeah.
Always pronounce it GIF.
I'm like, I feel like it's
Since
just
it's with the G.
whatever you prefer. Like, I like GIF. I mean, the guy said he liked, the person who made it apparently says GIF, but
I think
Oh, well,
that
should've put it
confuses
in.
I think that confuses it with JPEG, like
Yeah.
the just sound, so that's why most people do GIF.
yeah. All right.
So that's
I don't know
one
why
of the
you
things
asked that, because-
that's one of the things that webcomics can do that, I'm sorry, comics
Not yet.
not
Have you watched like Iron Man with their like little like flat thing?
Megan, are we living in the Marvel universe?
Anyway, how are they made? Do you want to start?
No, go ahead.
Webcomic sites.
Oh, right. That doesn't explain anything.
Anyway, so webcomic sites, generally you make a website to put the webcomic on.
That's what you're saying.
And there are certain free websites, there are websites you can pay, there are like, you know, all sorts of kinds.
Subscription-based things.
While with print comic companies, which are also called universe, like people generally refer to the DC universe and the DC or the Marvel universe rather than like them as that company. They print it into books.
However, there are some crossovers.
Crossovers! Marvel's online subscription, which I'm kind of surprised DC, as far as I know, doesn't have an online subscription, but hey, it's like reading print comics as webcomics. Exciting. Webcomics being printed, especially like when the webcomic person actually wants to make money with their webcomic, they'll
is
probably print it and
unusual.
sell it. And if they're popular, they sell a lot. And then there are those that I think mostly don't really happen that much anymore, but it was more like before webcomics got popular, you might have seen like in a comic book store, independently printed comics where people would just, you know, like before they started putting them on the web free, they would like print them out and try and sell them as that, which I feel is probably pretty hard. So yeah.
So, our next point would be the pros and cons of the old school and new school. Now, the thing about webcomics is, in general, they have a greater creative freedom than a lot of the like large company-owned comics, like the Marvel and DC universe. And this means that the author's stories and characters are not owned by anyone except for that author, which can be good and bad. For example, I don't know if any of you saw the Peter David panel, which was supposed to be a different panel, but he came in and saved the day. And he was talking about Hulk. And what happened with Hulk was, I believe he was not the creator of the character,
No, he was not.
but he like really turned the entire thing around.
For a while, Hulk hadn't been doing very well. So when he came on, when he was hired, he was able to improve sales and everything. But then the Marvel executives wanted to go in a different direction instead of the more, what was it? Psychological direction that he was trying to go in that people really liked. They just wanted him to turn the Hulk into a mindless brute, just destroying everything. And he's like, I don't really want to do that. I don't think the fans want that. But sadly, when it comes to print comics, that can happen a lot, is where the executives, for some reason, will get the idea in their head, oh, this is what the fans will buy. And it's not necessarily what they want to buy.
So characters changing hands like that can be good and it can be bad, but it doesn't usually happen with webcomics.
Yeah.
And official content with webcomics can only be produced when the author has the time, funding, and will to do so. Whereas, you know, with the large company-owned print comics, they're always making new stuff. Generally,
And
sometimes they discontinue.
They
things.
generally have more of a hard deadline. Like,
Yeah.
if you aren't, you know, writing or whatever, doing the art for whatever you need to on time, you're probably not going to have that job for very long. But then on the other hand, so how many of you read webcomics? And how many of you have ever had where the person says they update on this day and this day, and they've either not been able to make it, or not been, like, gone on hiatus, and, like, maybe, yeah. So that's the only problem, yeah, especially when it's, like, you know, just one or two people work on it, and, like, you know, life happens, so.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay, so with print companies, like I said earlier, owned by large companies, Marvel, DC, etc., there's a potential for many authors and artists to contribute to the same universe and storyline. However, this can lead to kind of a betrayal of the readers when they make some fatal error, or they change something, or they change it to their own vision of the character, which might not be what the readers wanted or what the creator had in mind. Improvements have been made sometimes, for example, Peter David coming onto the Hulk, but somehow pointless changes, they've also been made that can turn a fan base bitter. I'm sure we can all think of examples of that.
All right. So when do they get published? Like we just said, they're both technically released in installments, but some webcomics try and stick to a schedule. Don't always make it, but mostly are pretty good. And comic books are generally bound to, like, you need to get it out by this time or you're fired. So, who works on them?
In print comics, the basic team is generally the writer, penciler, inker, color sweater, and that's often different people. But in webcomics, it's often just one, or sometimes like a two-person group that do all of those jobs themselves.
And that includes, like, the editor, the, like, everything.
And one of the authors of a really great webcomic that I recommend to you all is called Dresden Kodak. The author, Aelin Diaz, posted on his, I also recommend his blog. He said, you know what it says about a comic that updates every day? That it updates every day, that's it. If it's the format of your strip, great. But the simple act of updating X amount of times is a question of format, not quality. There's nothing inherently admirable about putting out content rapidly. What matters is if that content is good. There are good daily comics, and there are good comics that update monthly, yearly, or basically never. There are comics where update is a meaningless concept because they only exist in books. The medium is diverse, to say the least, and the quality of the artist is largely determined by how they exploit that medium. So, wise words from Aelin Diaz.
All right, so now to even more of the versus part, the physical versus the intangible, which I think is one of the main obvious differences between print comics and
First thing that
webcomics.
comes to mind.
As you can see, a person who collects a lot of print comics can take up a lot of
Megan, is that a
space.
picture of your room?
I wish. Actually, no, I don't, because I have no place to sleep. But not like I would be sleeping if I were reading all those comics.
Sure.
So, but with webcomics, if you collect a lot of webcomics, you probably just have a big folder of favorites.
But you do need the internet to access those.
Yeah. Come on in! Join us!
Hi, I was just getting a room count, sorry.
Okay. You can join us if you want to afterwards.
Deal.
We'll try and save you a seat, but we can't guarantee anything.
What?
We'll try and save you a seat.
Appreciate it.
All right. Is that all I have for that one? Oh yeah. So pretty much what you can say is you can carry print comics around with you more easily. Like you said, you kind of need the internet to access webcomics unless you've, like, downloaded or saved all the pages or something.
More importantly, it's a format thing, because there are things you can do with physical comics that maybe you can't do with webcomics. You know, different sizes, but you can do a lot with webcomics utilizing the whole web page even.
Yeah. With webcomics, you can generally do, yes.
Is it also kind of a hindrance to have it as a physical thing? Because
then it could get damaged or something like that, in which case you wouldn't be able to read it.
Hindrance or
Yeah.
luxury? Because if you're, you know, if you have the
So he
privilege-
said, isn't it also kind of a hindrance to have the physical thing because it can get damaged? But
So if you have your print comics, then in theory you can look at them whenever. I mean, technically in theory you'll have the internet whenever, but it's all happened to us where our Wi-Fi goes down and we, you know, crawl into a corner and start
especially
playing.
here in the
I think that's
convention
just
center.
me. But you don't always have your webcomics with you. I suppose it really depends on where you read them, because if you have a mobile device, then you could access them anywhere, but you know, not everybody will have access to the internet. It's an interesting question.
What about the more almost emotional aspect of a physical comic? Like,
Of
That
being
is
able to hold
definitely a
it.
factor.
Yeah.
Which is why so many webcomic artists make a lot of their money from printing actual physical, you know, their pages. It's interesting, I always found it interesting personally, how people will buy something that they can see for free online.
Yeah. And the same thing, and even similar with the print comics, it's like if you can get at the library, like why not just get it at the library, you know? Like even like people would do with a lot of things like movies and other books and stuff. Like you can get it at the library,
But there's
I really
definitely
want my
an emotional
own
aspect.
Yeah, so that's why that is a good reason for why people buy webcomics. Yes.
So I've noticed you talked about how webcomic owners own their own characters, but I mean the indie comics do that too, like The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
That's true.
Which is
But
why
we're
we
trying
were
to say
saying
the
we're
best.
counting
We're
them
speaking
with like
in
more
really
print comics, but
generalizations.
yeah, that was the generalizations part, the disclaimer. Done, yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, what were you, sorry, what was I was gonna say about?
Oh, that when you have a print comic, it can be like
Oh,
the
yeah.
physicalness can be more emotional.
Like, even with books, if I've read a book that I got from the library, I just like, I want to buy it because I feel like, you know, you physically are connected to like have it. Maybe that's kind of silly, but it's like, you know, people
Oh,
like
yeah.
to say they own character, like, when they're like, they're a really big fan of a character, they want to buy all the things about that character.
Yeah.
Naturally, the first thing is going to be like the original comic. That's why I printed off like my favorite webcomic, even though it was a huge.
The obsession that fuels this entire con.
Yeah. So I made a webcomic into a print comic essentially. And I got really mad because the people who put comics on the web, they also get popular so that they have to, and then you take it off the internet, and then they like get made into print comics. So to me, I thought like web comics were like a temporary medium
Huh.
as opposed to that because
That's true.
There are, I think that's a rare case though.
But it is, yeah, but that is like slightly more of a potential. But then again,
Yeah.
it could,
Because it doesn't seem like print comics
medium.
will move
and
entirely
it
to
can
the
also
internet. but-
technically happen to print comics, especially old ones. Like my favorite, like I said, is Young Justice, and that was made in the 90s. But when I discovered it, it was in like mid, I don't know, like 2005 or something like that. And even though it wasn't, you know, that long ago, I mean, it's only like maybe 10 years ago that it ended. It was still like really hard to find any physical versions because I guess it just wasn't that popular enough to like, so like that can also happen. But it does seem like slightly more likely that it would be harder to recover if like, you know, who knows what could happen in the webcomic person's like personal life that maybe they just decide, you know what, I don't want any of this on the internet anymore and just shut down their website. I don't think that happens very often. That's probably like 0.00001%.
Yeah.
But you never
Unless
know.
it's like profit driven, like the company tells them you have to take it off the net.
That's true. If they do decide to like end up going with company, but then they turn into more of a, I guess more of what we were talking about when we talked about print comics. So, was there anything else?
There's a lot of publishers that will work like with webcomics and keep them webcomics, but also sell the merchandise so they stay webcomics.
Yeah, I've read about that. That's what really got me curious about like this panel is what makes people want to like still buy them or sell them even when it's available online free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting phenomenon.
We love our physical things. Okay, so then we're also going to show examples of the different sort of the slightly more, unique things that people have done when making their comics. So here is comic called Will World, which is a Green Lantern comic, and I don't know exactly, I can't really explain it, but they have very interesting panel formations. This is just the cover. This is just the cover, but it's almost hard to read because there's so much going on. It's almost like if you're in like a dream, but like all the thoughts that like possibly happen, like every stray thought is like put into this world. So it's a very like unique way, rather than just having like, you know, panel after panel, that they did that. And here's an example from another comic, which has been, I don't know if they still have the same artist or not, but it was gotten some kind of, it got a little infamous for its sort of strange paneling. As you can see here, it's like, it can be kind of hard to tell exactly where you need to go next. And I mean, that's the problem, is like, if you have normal panels, then people can, you know, see clear reading lines, but then it might get boring. But if you try to do something unique, if you get a bit too strange, then it can be like, it's very confusing.
It can track the story, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you don't want.
Yeah. So print comics can do interesting things, but webcomics tend to be a little bit better with doing more interesting things with their pages, since they don't have to stick to a solid whatever size page.
A lot of them do, but as we'll see in the next example, there are certain parts of the story when the webcomic format, like, it's very open-ended. You can do whatever you want with it, which can really drive a story.
Okay, so pretty much the thing with this page, I kind of zoomed out so you could see a bit more, but it sort of starts, especially if you read webcomics, you know, like it only shows a certain part in your internet, whatever Internet Explorer browser you use. And so while you're reading this one, you scroll down, and here's where the page would normally end. But if you keep scrolling, you can see this character falls through the other character's shadow and into darkness. And as you scroll, it almost feels like you're falling with her. So that's
Which
something.
has a completely unique effect.
And you can't really do that with print comics. Maybe make like a fold-out page.
Unless you're, you know, trying to scroll down the page, I don't think it'll work very well. And this next page is from a different comic. It's known for its very unique transitions between panels. Sometimes the panels, like the gutters between them, are omitted completely. It's a really beautiful effect sometimes. This is not the full page, but you can, at first glance, it's a little confusing, but once you read the story, you can see how it progresses. And it's just amazing to me when the art and the dialogue like progress in this sort of harmony. And I think this is from Dresden Kodak, by the way.
And the previous one was from Unsounded.
Yeah. Both great comics, I recommend them.
And this one especially is good because, like she said, if you glance at it, it's kind of hard to see like, oh, what's going on. But then if you start reading it, they've done a good job of putting all the speech bubbles in our normal left to right reading lines so that you can hopefully figure it out.
And if not, then you can always reread it. Moving on to the creators, and a really important part of any creative process is who's making it. And in theory, basically anyone can make a webcomic. You know, you can get a webpage for free, you put out your content, but not everyone can get published with a major comics producer. There's more competition. This doesn't mean that webcomic authors produce less professional work than the authors of printed comics, though.
That few people, no matter what's on their professional resumes, can make a good comic. An example of this, I don't know, since not everyone here has read print comics, DC's recent New 52, how many people have heard of that? So pretty much what DC decided to do, for those of us who don't quite know much or haven't like read it, or maybe you just probably don't want to, which I recommend, is they decided to completely reboot their universe. I'm not exactly sure why. I guess they thought, hey, maybe we can update it.
More lines.
Yeah, more people will get like excited about the like updated versions of these, and modernize them a little bit, because that's kind of worked for them in certain movies, like Batman, for example. Yes.
That's the second time they've done this, right?
I think so. Like they've done kind of, even Marvel, both Marvel and DC have done kind of like sort of like universe changing things that like sort of change things. Like for example, Marvel. If you guys have watched Avengers, you see Nick Fury is Samuel L. Jackson. Well, originally Nick Fury in the comic is a white guy, but what happened was in some sort of like kind of alternate universe, like they have both of them. I'm still not exactly sure.
No, one's the son. No, it's Nick Fury Jr.
He's Nick Fury Jr. What is
Yeah,
he?
he's Nick Fury Jr. Because Nick Fury can live, is living forever. So
Hi.
So
yeah, he's just the son.
Interesting. This is the first time I'm hearing about this.
I've seen somewhere the white guy is smaller. Anyway.
No, he's still
They
here.
do weird things.
He's still here, but he's just Nick Fury Sr.
Okay.
Now that we're all
has a son.
confused.
Okay,
They do weird things. They do weird things where they kind of, well, they might like go back and change some things about a character's background or something like that. But for this, as far as I know, and especially recently, is like they made a huge deal about it. As big a deal as they possibly could. Be like, whoa, we're changing things, we're modernizing things, look at what's changing.
And as for the creators, there's more of a potential for a steady stream of income if you work for print comics, but there's still no guarantee.
Anyway, so basically what happened is there are still some good stories with the New 52, but a lot of them, especially a lot of people who love certain characters for certain reasons, they changed a lot about those characters. So it kind of upset a lot of fans. And like they might have put like certain writers on certain characters that did like a really bad job with the characters. So that's an example of when people who are in charge aren't thinking quite as much about the fans, things can go wrong. While with webcomic authors, they can, I mean, you know, depending on how much time they have, they can be a lot more involved with their fans and try to like, you know, maybe like please them a bit more within reason. So
it really detracts from a comic when their main focus is just to please the fans. So I mean, I
not
understand
just to please fans, but I mean like keeping more to the character rather than just trying to make money.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like she said, there is more potential for print comic workers to get more steady stream of income, but even then it's kind of, you know, the sort of work atmosphere is like you can be dropped or added to a comic anytime while, yeah.
And there are webcomic creators that live off of the earnings from their comics. Aaron Diaz, I believe, and Tom Siddell, the author of Gunner Creek Court, I don't know if anyone's heard of it, recently, I think earlier this year, quit his job, his day job, to work full-time on Gunner Creek Court. And I think it's working out for him so far. I'm very excited. So you have a question?
Comment more like, it's just, I feel like the reason that the webcomic authors have more, I guess, knowledge of their readers is simply because there's no middlemen there.
Yes,
because
they're more connected.
Because they are the ones that are writing, drawing, creating storyline, and then putting it up, seeing what the readers would say, while in a company you're going to have 20 different people doing 20 different things.
Definitely. That's a very good comment. I was going to make that point later on, but beat you to it.
Let's do that.
And it's so easy for a reader to, once you've read a webcomic and you're like, oh man, you know, it stopped updating. What am I going to do now? Waiting for the next update. And it's so easy to just click a link and see their entire body of work or all their sketches and backstory. It really brings you closer to the creator, I think. Whereas print comics, there are definitely ways to find out more about the creators, but it's not quite so quick or easy.
Okay.
But that's what I found.
Alright. Okay, so this is a list of our personal favorite webcomics and comics. Would you like to start with webcomics?
I would very much love to start with webcomics. So, one of the comics that is one of the first I've started reading, I've been following it for years, and I will follow it to the end of my days. It's called Lackadaisy. It's an amazing comic. It's beautifully written, beautifully drawn too. So it's definitely one of my favorites. The characters are unbelievable.
Basically, 1920s cats.
1920s cats.
It's pretty
if you
awesome.
want to put in 2 words.
Put in an awesome, even awesomer than it sounds.
Yeah. Unsounded is another one. It's one that I followed more recently, but definitely a keeper. I'd recommend it to everybody. Beautiful art. One of the examples of non-traditional paneling that we showed earlier was from this comic. I'm not really sure how to describe any of these very well because these stories are just so, fleshed out. You really have to read them. And if anyone wants me to hand out links later, you can always write those down.
It's got a zombie as a main character, but like an awesome zombie.
He talks. I found that zombies in webcomics are really cool people, especially when they talk. Another is Gunner Creek Court, which I started reading this comic a few years ago, and it just changed the way that I saw. I'm not sure if everything would be too dramatic, but it really changed my life. I'm not sure like so many of these defy genres that I can't really peg it into one place for you. But it's got some sci-fi, it has robots, but it also has all this mythology woven into it. But it's just this completely original story and these characters that you just want to know more about. It makes you excited and kind of breaks your heart every time you read the new update and wait for the next one. Okay. And another one is Octopus Pie. Pretty different from the other ones on the list. It's sort of realistic in some ways. It's set in New York, and but it sort of delves into the absurd a few times, which is pretty enjoyable. The Meek is another great comic, and I've been following that for a few years. Beautiful art, beautiful story. I have a quote from that author later on. Hannah's Not a Boy's Name is an example of, unfortunately, a webcomic that was discontinued before it ended. Really broke a lot of people's hearts on the internet. But sometimes I like to go back and reread it because of old memories. Shonen Fight, I think you know more about this one than I do.
It's basically, I guess you can pretty much describe it as, think of Sailor Moon, but with guys. Magical boys, I think that pretty much call it. No, it's way more exciting than you think. Except better than Sailor Moon. Just try it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful and brightly colored and quite interesting how they do they have a wide variety of types of people. Like they don't just stick to like this like Sailor Moon. It's all like everybody's a Japanese girl. And, like maybe they have like different hair colors or something, but they're all pretty much similar.
Well, this one has like.
Well, are you sure about that? Because, I don't know, it's a body shape. But it's interesting. And The Abominable Charles Christopher. Not quite sure how to describe it because I'm not sure. None of us
best stories are difficult to describe, I think.
Yeah, but it's got like a main storyline that's very interesting with sort of like a Yeti type creature, I guess. And his adventures, and it's also got like sort of like little mini story arcs that he goes on with like, it's very like strange but amusing and like, look it up. Okay, so on to comics. As I've said before, Young Justice is one of my favorites. I'm sure you can find it online somewhere. And it's pretty much about, it's a teen superhero group. And I found that this comic so far has one of the best balances of like happy and like witty exchanges and like banter and stuff, and balances it out relatively well with the teen angst and whatever else they might be going on with in their lives. But it also like really shows each of them as like people, like their age. And I've read other teen superhero comics where it's like nothing but angst. It's just like, okay, is that what you think like all teens do is angst? Like, I know there's a lot of angst, and I know a lot of the public sees a lot of angst, but like, it's not the whole, like, we don't just angst as teens. There is more to teens than that. And Young Avengers and Runaways are both Marvel series. They actually, both of them kind of have some crossovers. Once again, these are two teen superhero groups. Very interestingly different. So when they have the crossovers, it's always interesting to see, because Young Avengers ends up being a group of kids that they come during the time when the Avengers have been disassembled, and then the Avengers come back and are like, you guys are kids, you can't do this. And they're like, no, we're superheroes and you can't stop us from being awesome. And the Runaways, kind of oppositely, find out that all their parents are supervillains, so they end up running away. And so their crossovers are very interesting. Green Lantern, my favorite arcs of those are Blackest Night, Brightest Day, where they bring in not just Green Lanterns, but all the colors. And they did I think they did a very good job of that.
Colorful things, don't you?
I love rainbows. What is next? Under the Hood. I don't know if any of you have watched the movie that they made based on this, Under the Red Hood, which is pretty similar. It's basically about the second Robin, Jason Todd, was killed by the Joker. He comes back. The movie's pretty good. It's pretty true to the comic, but the comic is even better. So watch the movie, read the comic, do both. They're both really good. Journey into Mystery is also a very recent story arc about when Loki has been turned into a kid, basically. So it's very interesting how people treat him, how he acts. I can't really say much more without giving spoilers, so read it. Serenity is a comic. Do you want to talk about that one?
I'll let you've read it more than I have.
Serenity is based on the show. If anyone has watched Firefly Serenity, then read the comic. And if you haven't watched Firefly Serenity, watch Firefly and watch Serenity, and then read the comic. And Blue Beetle finally was a really good superhero comic because sometimes I feel that a lot of superhero comics kind of forget that the superheroes also have real lives, like, hey, secret identity here. And this did a really good job of balancing the secret identity with the superhero itself, especially when they showed, like, if you guys, like, even if you don't know that much about superheroes, I'm sure you all know that most of them don't really, like, either they don't have any parents, or they don't have any families, or like something tragic happened to their parents or families, so they don't have any families, and that's why they're superheroes. Blue Beetle actually has a mother, a father, and a little sister, and they're not like all super angsty all the time. They actually are like a real family. It's amazing.
No way.
So now we want to ask you guys, what are some of your favorites? Comics and webcomics.
This isn't self-serving at all. I don't want to, use you all for my personal entertainment. Add to my list of webcomics. Yes, you.
I have a complaint to you.
A complaint to me?
Yes.
Oh, do I need to amend this list?
Yes, what happened to the very first webcomic that we read together?
Wasn't that like it?
No, before that. Do you remember a polar bear?
Yes, I remember that.
I am very disappointed in you.
Next time, I'll add it to the list.
Anyways, it's called On the Rocks for everyone else.
On the Rocks.
It's not updated anymore. Makes me very sad, but you can still read the old comics. It's
all the old pages.
It's about a polar bear in Antarctica.
It's a strip comic, kind of like they put in newspapers, but it's online.
Nice.
My favorite comic is Todd Ellison and Petunia Violet. I don't really have time to read webcomics because I'm usually doing other things, but this one I really like because I think it might be based off of Manchurian Candidate, kind of the sleeper soldier thing, and I'm not sure, and I'm mostly reading it to try to find out. But since this girl's named Petunia, and the thing is called Todd Allison and the Petunia Violet, and Todd Allison is like a botanist, I'm trying to see if maybe like the flowers he makes, because they're like neighbors living in an apartment together, and they live in Australia, and he's like from London. And I wanted to see, because there's a terrorist named Violet who's like blowing up buildings, and nobody knows who this is. But Petunia also has this brother who like somehow got his way into the government. And like Petunia and her brother Elijah, they're both Aborigines, and they show some like a little bit of racism in there because like they're dark skinned, and she has like light hair, purple hair, and at first I thought it was just like, anime type thing, but then I found out that like they're actually representing the light haired Aborigines, so there's actually some history in there, and it's really intriguing.
Yeah, it's amazing how much you can learn from stories.
I know, seriously. So like I'll know things, like I'll say something and like my mom will be like, where did you learn that? I'm like, from comics, I'm telling you. These are actually educational. They're not just like the simple
comics.
Yeah. But she kind of knows better now. Anyway, who's else? You raised your hand? I saw you raise your hand. Well, now you have to tell us.
No one has a favorite.
What's your favorite manga then?
Yeah,
It counts as a comic.
I'm more of a manga reader, so I don't know.
It counts as a print comic.
Okay, well, yeah, so,
Even if you can't find them anymore.
yeah, but, my favorite is actually 21. But I don't know, I doubt any reader would want to read it. It's more just specialized.
Gotta make them want to read it.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where I think like with a lot of comics and webcomics is that some of them can like be specific towards specific interests of people, but in that sense they also kind of like limit their audience, but they also make the audience like the fans of those are like more devoted and have some trust about those.
They walk a fine line, yes.
You wanna tell us?
Yes, please.
I play a lot of video games more. It's stuff that I read or look for, like Penny Arcade, but there will be enough about that. There's one I picked up about a year ago called Awkward Zombie, and it's a skate comic that just barely has.
I've heard of it.
And I thought it was pretty funny. I read Dr. Ninja.
Oh, I read a few pages of that, not the full thing.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's just about it. Well, I read home stuff,
But no one's really sure what category that's in.
I went to the panel for it yesterday morning, and apparently they didn't know either.
Yeah, no one knows. It's kind of the mystique that surrounds it.
Really bad job trying to explain. They got the very basic gist of it, but they spent like a quarter of the panel talking
But
about
they
fan art.
tried.
Yes,
They tried, and
I
that's
appreciate
good.
that.
Because I know a lot of people who just like, they're like, I don't know what it is, I don't want to find out.
Or they're just
people
gonna,
who are
or
just
they're
like,
gonna false
or
name.
people who are just like, I'm a fan of it, and I can't explain it. So at least they tried.
Yeah, they tried. They did give a halfway decent, like, very incredibly basic, but they spent a lot of time on fan art, which was weird to me. So that was another one. Home stuff takes a while.
I'm really amazed that the Homestead got as popular as it did, because it wasn't it just like another webcomic like any other that like somebody just decided on?
He
I don't think
does
so.
I don't think it's like any
flashes
other.
and animations, which most webcomics also do not do.
Oh,
Yeah.
Flash.
Yeah, he does
had
like
this,
animations
a
and
music
stuff.
team.
It's interactive to a degree.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's games, flash games in it. It's
Oh,
crazy.
really?
And it seems like, I feel like also one of the things is because it's like, it seems, at least to outsiders, it seems kind of harder to understand. Like,
Oh, it's
people like outside are like, I don't get Homestuck, and like it's hard to like find out about it. I feel like once you found out about it and you're like in there, like you feel
Then
like
you get
more
sucked into
special.
the
'Cause you're
vortex.
like, yeah, I know. So it's like people are even more devoted because they're like one of the like they got past the level of I have no idea what's going on.
Well, it starts out pretty simple, and then he has this kind of aggravating habit of occasionally jumping back into the past and not telling exactly when this happened. So that's annoying, and it's got over 6,000 pages now, I believe it was.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's been going on for a while, and between that and all the people that like the other characters that came into it later on, it's just kind of something now. So, trying to think. Well, I heard of Black Days before, so that was.
I haven't read it yet, but I
I wish that she would be a little more kind with her updates, because last time she posted updates, like,
Yes, but her updates are so beautiful that, and
why-
they're free.
That's why you collect a lot of webcomics, because when one doesn't update, hopefully the others
Yeah, I don't know if
update.
anybody else has done this, but the reason that I have like this list up here is like the snowflake off of the glacier of webcomics that I read. The idea at first was to have enough webcomics that I would get an update on at least one of them every day of the week, but it progressed from there.
So anyone else? You want to tell us about your favorite webcomics?
Cyanide and happiness, does that count?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, definitely. That's a good.
Go ahead.
I read XKCD and Saturday Morning Serial, both of which do not tell stories.
Yeah, it's a different format from
Yeah.
like strip panels. Is that what they're called? Not strip panels, but strip comics.
And it's closer to a cartoon you would find
Yeah.
in a newspaper.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the like a couple that we mentioned, like the Abominable Charles Christopher. It's more like that. Like it updates like a strip, and especially like when they kind of like leave the main story, like take a break from the main storyline, then it's very much like something you find in a newspaper comic where you don't need to like be connected to any sort of, you don't need to read the rest of it, you just read it, it's like a newspaper strip, you just like enjoy that one page, strip, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I forgot one, I'm sorry. There was one on DeviantArt that was done by this famous artist, and she wanted to make a statement, and I think it's called Nights, like K.
I've started reading that.
Yes.
Who's
Yeah.
host?
It's pretty short, actually. Because it's like a flash animation for each
Yeah.
chapter, and it probably takes so long for her to do each individual illustration. It's like a picture book. I think she's selling it as one, but it's also free online. But it's about like the future in China where like it's so polluted that they can't see the stars. So this boy flies this kite with like Christmas light strings strung onto it and puts stars in the sky. And he has a group of people who like all help him, even though he like didn't want any friends at first. Other people started helping him because they were inspired by that. So I thought that was cool.
You guys tried reading any motion comics?
I think I've tried it.
Across any, except like sometimes like, I think the last time was like on some DVD of something I watched, and it's like, watch the motion comic, and I was like, okay.
It just-
and it wasn't like quite that
Yeah, I haven't
great.
found a motion comic
Sometimes, at least the ones that I've watched, I mean, other than, like, not including, like, just the comics that have, like, random animated panels, like, just, like, motion comics, it just seems like simple cartoon
They
animation.
were
almost, you know?
trying to make it like a movie, but they didn't really want to.
Like, they didn't want to do the full cartoon animation.
so they just
They're just kind of, like, move them a little, so it's, like, so far, like, I mean, it could turn into something more interesting, especially as technology progresses, you know, who knows what we could see in the future, but, like, right now, I feel like motion comics like aren't like quite that exciting or different to like, I don't know, pull me away from just watch a cartoon or
maybe I need to read more.
I was just going to mention this one, like, I think it's just because it takes more effort, because not only do you have to make things a movie, and then get voice actors and all that kind of
Yeah.
The original Dead Space had one that counted for the game did that was really, really, really well done. The artist was actually downstairs earlier.
Nice.
Yeah, so.
See, that I haven't read, so maybe it'll change my opinion of it.
Oh, yeah. So
Was it part of Dead Space? I'm sorry, like the actual storyline? Like,
it's a story that's set just before the game does. So
is it a fan art or?
No, it's a official set.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you can probably find that on YouTube. I found it on YouTube.
Oh, cool. Yes, YouTube is useful for motion comics. That's what, yeah. All right, so kind of similar line of thought. What makes comics great?
So, what do we love about comics? Like, just regardless of, you know, how or where we see them, you know, what makes a superior art form, in my opinion, for certain stories? Like, what are your standards for a webcomic or a comic? Because they're a combination of many different things.
Like I took a superheroes class, and it's like how we said, combination of many different storytelling skills. Like a lot of the thing that draws people to comics is it's not just completely mental imagination, like reading a novel, and it's not completely fully visual, like watching a movie. It's sort of like a combination of reading and watching something. So kind of attracts a lot of people to it.
So there's a lot of different creative processes that go into that. So, like, what does a webcomic or a comic have to do in order to keep your interest? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I need to raise my hand, yes.
Characters, definitely characters, like the
Yes.
interaction and the setting, it could be anything. I think it's really, to me, it's the characters, because just depending on the different type of people and how they interact and stuff.
Yeah, and in fact that's one of the things that Peter David said when we saw him is you can carry on a story with strong characters and weak plot, but if you have weak characters, it doesn't matter how strong your plot is. It's just
No one's
people
right,
don't
they won't
care.
enjoy
People
it.
aren't going to connect.
Yeah. So that's definitely something that I need when I read a webcomic. It's got to have interesting characters.
I have to love the characters. At least one character has to be. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, one, you have to make sure you're spelling everything properly, because that's more aggravating.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that can turn off people. Like even if you're a great storyteller,
'Cause it
artist,
takes you
it
out
could just
of
then
the
you're just
story.
like, you're so great. Like why would you
Or
do
the
that?
word bubbles are off. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I had a friend who was trying to Kickstarter went up, and he sent me what he thought was like fantastic. One of his friends thought was great. I took a look at it, and all of the type of text he used to write with was hard to read against black, which was very strange. It was like dark red and black at the same time. Why would you choose to do that? That's strange. And the bubbles were either way too big or way too small constantly.
Oh god.
So like that's one thing. The art style can help. Like if it's one thing to have like an art style that isn't as rendered. Like all the stuff you guys have up there is like pretty,
fancy,
realistic, highly rendered type stuff. You don't have to do that. But it needs to be consistent. It needs to be able to
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
can I tell how far away this is compared to where this character is?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
It needs
Yeah,
to
I
be able
think
to tell the
it
story.
needs to just have basics. Like even if you're like don't have the best art, so long as you have like simple things right, like the mechanics of it, like you were saying, the speech bubbles, you need to be able to tell the difference, see what you're reading.
And in that way, sometimes simplicity is better than these beautiful, complex things that don't really tell your story very well.
I know Manga has a tendency to like if they have like a 2-page like thing where it's kind of hard to read because everything's like exploding. It's like I don't know what's going on.
Everything's exploding.
Yeah. Let's see. Past that, good character and plot moments, and if that's the kind of setting you're interested in, like my personal thing is like if it has a good enough story, I'll read just about anything. I'll watch just about anything.
Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, yes.
I feel like the artwork does contribute when it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'll read anything with almost any style of art, but the ones that I actually get,
It's nice to look at pretty things.
yes, it is. But the ones I really get obsessed about and get dedicated for and want to print out pictures of and hang all over my walls, and I would if I could afford the ink. Yeah, those are the ones with the real, the actual artwork,
Yeah.
So,
It's easy to connect to a character when
they're pretty.
Okay, you finished up soon, so go ahead.
Sorry, another one is, I thought, conflict and type of conflict. Like, my brother and I had seen a series called Kingdom of the where basically the entire plot involved this girl not being able to tell this guy that she liked him, even though it was pretty obvious the guy liked her back. And then they tried to tell each other, and then they took it the wrong way because they thought they wanted to be friends. And it's like, you just want to put your head against the wall.
the entire plot.
Yeah, the plot is basically made up of misunderstandings. And I know like a lot of stories that are basically, the plot is made up of misunderstandings.
That's painful after a while.
Yeah, like even the promise from Avatar, that whole, I don't know if you remember, but it's like, I could have solved this in 3 seconds. You let me in there and talk to somebody. It's so aggravating as opposed to like.
It's like every so often that kind of makes, you're like, but then it's solving, you're like, okay, fine, but if it keeps happening,
Definitely.
you're like, okay, I can't deal with the stress. All right,
So I'd like to end on this quote that, when other people say things that I feel but can't put into words properly, then you quote them. And this is from the author of The Meek, another comic I recommend. Dershing Helmer said, "Comics are to me the greatest art form because there are so many elements to master. A person who creates a full comic must at the very least be a great planner, a great storyteller, have an eye for layout, know how to pencil, ink and color in a way that tells their own story, and of course, they have to know how to write. Becoming more than simply proficient at all of these components can easily take a lifetime to learn, which is why it's so amazing that there are so many beautiful webcomics and comics out there that we can appreciate.
And actually, it's also kind of interesting because if you think about it, like for webcomics, one person has to do that, and that's like amazing for 1 or 2 people to do. But then for print comics, these bunch of different people have to come together and try and like make the writer's vision come true, or even like maybe the writer wants them to like take certain things into their own hands. So it's like to create a really good comic, a bunch of people have to work together. So it's like either way, an amazing like creation coming from people's minds. So to end, we just want to leave you with a few pages/panels of some scenes and moments that have really touched us.
It really got us hooked on a comic.
Sure, or explain it.
Okay, so one of the things in this comic, this is from Gunner Creek Court, by the way, is they have this really unique, if you want you can come closer to read the dialogue, it's really good dialogue, this unique view on robots that I feel sci-fi doesn't explore the side of them very often. This robot is kind of explaining to the main characters how they don't think of their robotic purposes as subservience to humans. They're happy just to be. And it was a really great moment in this comic. And when I read this page, I'm like, yes, this is... Okay, the lights just turned off.
Okay, so yes, comics, robots, we like them. And this is a scene from basically Green Lantern tells everyone in the city to evacuate, big army coming, and he wants to save them all. The city has just been rebuilt and is going to be destroyed again. And they decide to not leave and show their support for their city's superhero by lighting a bunch of green lights to show their support, which I always love. Like, I don't know if any of you watch Spider-Man, but that part where like he's fighting, I think, Green Goblin, and everybody starts throwing things at Green Goblin to save Spider-Man. Like, when everybody comes together to save their city's superhero, I love that. Next.
This is from Octopus Pie. It's a very sort of touching dialogue, I think. Also, there's always a punchline with this comic, but it's sort of realistic, and I really appreciate that about it.
And finally, once again, Young Justice, my favorite comic. In case you haven't guessed my lights. Okay.
Young Justice.
This is a great scene that I feel like really shows how much they like understand like superheroes are people too. Like, and it really connects like not just like yes, superheroes. I love superheroes, but I also like to see their like human side. Like here they're talking about like we were teens and yeah, we messed stuff up, but now we're all friends. So thank you for coming to this panel, and we hope you enjoyed it. And hopefully you also have examples in webcomics where you feel at least once they talk about how you, yourself, your relationships, that sort of thing. And
hopefully you have some new ones to add to your list.
Helps you through the hard times.
Thank you so much for
And yes, definitely thank you everyone for coming. All of you.
I love you. I didn't hear that. There we go.
Nobody's gonna like me. I love you too, Richard.
Love you too, Aelin.
Oh, and I want to take a picture of y'all. Everyone gather towards the center.
So can I film you taking a
Go on
picture?
that side. Go on that side.
We should all film one at space. This is only a portion of everyone who was there.
Well, let's take this girl lights turn out again. 1, 2, 3. Nice.
Thank you guys so much for coming, especially after all the chaos.
Yeah. Especially
Fire
after the
alarms.
issues the convention center had, which wasn't their fault, but you know.
Yeah, you guys are hardcore.
Thank you for telling us what happened.
Yeah, my friend had to be like right next to the door and the guy ran into it and she told the security guys it's just they had to make sure there was nothing else.
Yes.
Really? Somebody said that there was like a balloon that might have set it off. Oh, maybe that's one of the firefighters that thought that would have been what was
Someone told me.
I'm glad you guys
The guy ran into it.
Was it a traffic
Yeah.
Is that what I heard?
No, my friend saw someone run into the emergency exit door up 2 floors.
Thank you for filming.